Hi.
Hi there,
Hi. What's your name?
Rajinder Gill.
Okay. And can you tell us something about yourself? Like where and when were you born?
I was born in Uganda
Okay.
and then I immigrated to India, stayed there for 10 years, did my higher studies, and from there on I got engaged and got married in Canada, and that's how I ended up in Canada.
Okay. And like what was the year when you first came to Canada? Do you recall?
I came in June of 1972.
June of 1972.
Yes.
And so basically you got married in India, and after getting married you came to Canada.
No, I got engaged in India
Okay.
and then I came here as a fiancée and I got
Okay.
married in Abbotsford Sikh Temple.
Okay.
Yes.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yes.
And so like how did you come to Canada? Like what was the mode of transportation you used?
I came by air.
Okay.
During those days, I think the era of the ships and slow moving had gone by,
Okay.
and I bought an airline ticket, Air India from Delhi to Tokyo, and Japan Airlines from Tokyo to Vancouver, and I landed in Vancouver.
Okay, very nice. And then after that, you stayed in Vancouver, or did you move
No,
anywhere else?
no. My fiance was from Mission,
Okay.
BC, and so I stayed with them when I first arrived. I had no family here, and then 20 days after I landed, my marriage was set, the date was set, and then we got married in the Abbotsford Sikh Temple, and then we started living together. And I lived there for about 6 months, and my husband, he was a lawyer, he was doing his law in UBC, and then I moved with him to Vancouver, and we stayed there till he finished his law, and stayed in Burnaby for 7 years, had my 3 children in Burnaby, and then we moved back to Mission for 20 years, and then after that moved to Abbotsford for last, well, came here in 1990, so that would be something like 26, 7,
Yeah,
27
somewhere
years
around there.
now.
So basically, most of the cities you've lived in Canada is Vancouver, Burnaby, Abbotsford, and Mission,
That's right,
the Lower Mainland area.
Lower Mainland.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
So can you tell us something about your first memories in Canada? You know, like the very first few days when you had landed in Canada. How did you feel? Like, what was going on in your mind? Anything important you observed?
Yes. Well, because I had no family here, only my brother had traveled with me. He was younger than I am. Uh, and it was lonely. It was different. I had been in India for 10 years, and definitely was a change. The atmosphere at home was Punjabi at all times, but once you stepped outside, then it changed into a Western. I had been exposed to some Western culture before I went to India.
In
So
Uganda
in Uganda
Yeah.
and Kenya.
and Kenya.
And yes, those three countries, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, they were together. They were
Okay.
known as East Africa,
Mhm.
and they were under the British rule.
Okay.
In the 1960s, when we moved from Uganda, Kenya to India, there was a turmoil happening in East Africa for independence.
Okay.
So my father, he retired, and then we moved to India, and
Okay.
that's where we stayed for 10 years before I came to Canada.
And where in India? In Delhi?
In Punjab.
In
No,
Punjab.
we were in Punjab. My background is Moga.
Okay.
So I went to school in Moga and Ludhiana. I did my high school in Moga, and then I did my pre-medical in Moga, and then I moved to Ludhiana and I did my MBBS over there. I'm a doctor by profession.
Okay, very nice.
I'm a doctor by
So
profession.
you completed all your education before you
Yes,
came to Canada?
before I came.
Okay.
We were engaged for three years because I was still in the middle. This is getting recorded. We were engaged for 3 years.
Okay.
Before he was still schooling, I was still schooling, so we
So you were
decided
waiting
to
for
finish.
both
Yes.
of you to finish your studies?
That's right.
Okay.
He wasn't quite finished, but I was.
Okay.
So I came here. It was disappointing, my profession-wise. British Columbia had pretty well closed doors towards foreign medical students. And
so your studies were not recognized by the
no,
system over here.
no, they weren't.
Okay.
No. I was advised to either redo the whole thing, that is going back 6 years,
Hmm.
which was not acceptable, not at my age when I was
Oh yes.
25.
Oh, yes.
Then I was advised to go down to States. I said, no, Canada is home. It was
Hmm.
my husband's home for the last. His father had come here in 1930, and there was no way we could move anywhere.
Yeah.
So, yeah, after much thought and much struggle, gave up my thought of ever practicing medicine, and became a mother, a full-time mother at home. And my
Okay.
husband, he finished his law and he started his practice. Life was good.
So in your first 5 years you did not work, so you stayed at home.
I stayed at home.
Okay.
Yes. After 2 years, I had my children came along. Uh, one in 74, 77, 1980. So I had 3 boys at home, and there was. We did have some real estate businesses going on, and there was a mill that my father-in-law owned, and I did all the paperwork and did the bookwork for them,
Okay.
and raised my children.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice.
Mhm.
So again going back to your first 5 years in Canada, how was the social and community life? Like what did people used to do after work?
Okay.
And
Just to let you know that I know the older pioneers. My father-in-law, even my husband came in 1949, and I would consider them the older generation of the pioneers.
Mhm.
And by the time I came, things had changed a lot.
Okay.
There was more education. There was more awareness of our Indian culture and Indian language. I brought in, and a lot of other people who came in the 70s, we brought in the cultural part of Punjabi,
Hmm.
which was not here before. What the people spoke at home was rustic Punjabi because they came from the villages.
Yes.
There was no educated Punjabi, and was very visibly noticeable. Nobody said gee.
Hmm.
Nobody said tusi.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the basic things that we brought here, and which did bring some change into the older Canadians.
Canadian, yeah.
Yes. And there was knowledge of English. Educated people were coming in the 70s. I think the educated people from India, from Punjab, and from Bombay and Delhi, they would mostly go to Toronto,
Hmm.
to Ontario, and they would not come to BC. The only reason I can think is because there were more labor jobs here,
Okay.
well-paying labor jobs.
Labor jobs, yeah.
Well-paying, I said. Whereas if you're educated, you don't want to do this labor job, even though it is well-paying. So this society stayed that way.
Hmm.
They were well-to-do. The Punjabis were well-to-do. They worked hard, and they were paid well. Whereas if you're educated, then you went to Toronto because that's
That's
where
where
you did better over
Yeah.
there. Yes.
Okay.
So that was the thing. And the festivals, my husband didn't even know about Diwali.
Okay.
I mean, try explaining to him what
Yeah.
Diwali is. We live with Diwali, and he didn't know
Yeah.
what Diwali was. But like I said, in the 70s, a lot of educated people did come here as visitors. Young people came as visitors.
Yeah.
70s was full of visitors coming. Pierre Trudeau, he gave them amnesty, and they all became landed.
Hmm.
So that was a good step. It was a wonderful step. I'm glad it happened when it happened, and that brought in our cultural part of
Yes.
Punjab. Yes.
Okay. And so, do you recall any important incident in your, say, first 5 years in Canada? Something that kind of affected your life positively or negatively that you want to share?
Yes, there are a lot of positive things that happened here. Coming from India, of course, the culture part is good. The social part is good. Like what I'm saying is, we do meet at the gurdwaras. I don't think we met as much in India at the gurdwaras. but here we did it, which was a focal point. And
that
I
used to be
learned real early that that's a focal point.
Yeah.
We
That
go
used to be on
together.
the weekends that people used to get
Yes,
together
on
at
the
the temple.
weekends, on the
Okay.
weekends. And people were warm and socially accepting. Families were very close. Coming from different parts of Punjab, they were very, very close. It was the same in East Africa also, because you came from different parts. It was not a whole village picked up and brought,
Yeah.
but friendships were developed. So from different people, from different areas, they became very, very friends. And I know how you describe them, oh, Mugewala,
Yeah.
oh, Fridgotala, like that's how they were described. But yet they all sat together and they socialized.
And lived as a big extended family.
And that's how they helped each other. Yes, yes.
It's very nice. And like, can you share something more about your migration patterns? Like after you came to Canada, you said that you had no family here. You were the only one from your family who came to Canada.
From my family.
Yeah. So eventually, did they also move here, or like how was it?
Yes. When I came here, my brother, he came with me as a visitor.
Okay.
That's the way everybody was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And within 6 months, he was educated, so he got his landed status. Went to work, and then he sponsored my mother, father, and my brother and sister.
Okay.
So they arrived in 1974. And
In Abbotsford?
They came to Abbotsford. They stayed with us for about 2 weeks, and then they moved to Maple Ridge.
Okay.
They were there for 3 years, and then from then on, my brother decided to move to the interior. He went to Sparwood,
Okay.
Alford, in the mining industry.
Okay.
So they all moved with him. And now I'm the only one who lives in Lower Mainland. All my brothers and sisters, they live in Calgary now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
like after you came to Canada, did you used to visit India back and forth?
Yes. My father-in-law did have some land when he first immigrated, which was not very much. That was the reason why he came to Canada, to have a better life. He knew that land was very little, and so he found out that this country, you can work hard and you get paid for it.
Yeah.
And that's why he came in the 1930s. He went through tough times like depression, the Great Depression
Great
of the
Depression
30s.
of the 30s,
Yes,
yeah.
of the 30s. He went through that, and he left my mother-in-law, his family, and his child back in India.
Okay.
And he was here for 19 years without being able to go back.
Oh, I know.
So the family was separated.
Mhm.
Tough times. Then when he did go back, that's when my husband was born in India. He was 1 year old when they came here. So yeah, those and then you listen to all that, and you do realize as to how things were then and how things have changed. When my parents came, jobs were easily available. Things were affordable. If you worked, they were affordable.
Mhm.
And they settled.
Very nice.
And going back, that land, my father-in-law, he put some money into the land, increased the acreage, and then later on, once he retired, he built a house, and we are regular Indian visitors now. We go
Okay.
just about every year.
Just about every year. Okay.
Just
that's
about
good.
every year
So
for
you're
4
connected
weeks.
with your roots and everything.
Very much so.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
very good to know.
Yes.
And like any other thing that you want to mention that kind of challenged your migration process, of settling in Canada, like any specific challenges or anything.
Well, I got married into a well-settled family, so I didn't really have very many challenges.
Mhm.
Things were taken care of. But that doesn't mean that I did not go out, and I became part of the system. Watching what was happening to the Indo-Canadian community over here in the 90s, I became very involved with the center over here,
Okay.
and with the community services, going into violence with women and then children, and so we would hold workshops, and I used to be involved in that part
Okay.
of that. And
So you
that-
did some social work.
I did a lot of social work. Yes, I did. I worked volunteer with the food bank, with the community services, and then when the Indo-Canadian Center opened, of course, then we were part of this one.
Very
So,
nice.
during the early days, yes.
Very nice.
Financial help and time. My husband is still on the advisory committee.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so,
Very nice.
yeah.
And also want to ask you, how was the relation of the Punjabi community with the Aboriginal community over here back in the 1970s, and like how did it change over time? Do you have any recollection of that?
Well, when I first came here, I couldn't even tell an Aboriginal Indian from the other Indians. I couldn't tell because they looked the same with the coloring of the skin and all that. Being in Mission was it's a very big. There was a large Aboriginal community over there. There was a school on the hill known as St. Mary's, I think. And when my children were young, they would go play soccer against the Aboriginal children.
Okay.
Because that school was still ongoing. And then once they decided to close the school down, then all the students from there, they got distributed to the other schools, and my middle son and my younger son, they had Aboriginal children in their classrooms. And in fact, my younger son, his friend John was an Aboriginal, and who lived on the street, and they played together. And because they had kind of moved on to the mainstream, they weren't any different from the other children. Being in Mission, my children, the area that we lived in, there were lesser of Indo-Canadian children, so my children didn't even know any difference. They couldn't even tell the difference between the Caucasians, between the Indians and the Aboriginals. So to them, it was not even noticeable until in the 90s we moved to Abbotsford, and then they first brought home the fact that, Mom, did you notice how many Punjabi people there are here? Because Abbotsford had a bigger community, and then it became noticeable. And then by then, from one we got two Gurdwaras, and things changed. The dynamics changed. They did not notice the Aboriginal children as much as they noticed the other Punjabi children. And I myself, and that's what I first noticed first, was them coming into the mainstream. And then I remember going to UBC with my husband and looking around and not seeing any Aboriginal student there. And it was noticeable, that not very many children are graduating and coming to university.
And what about South Asian people in UBC?
South Asians there were some. I'm not going to say too many, but 1%.
At that time.
At that time, but 1%. Yeah. Some, not that many.
Yeah.
But times have changed.
Oh yes.
It's amazing how many children are able to go to the universities and get higher education. Either it wasn't affordable then, or the system was such. As even when my husband he was going to school, once you did grade 12, you started work in the mill with your father, and no school.
No school.
Rarely did anyone go to school. Yeah.
So things have changed.
Things have changed. Yeah, very much so.
And do you
for the
have,
better.
For the better.
You asked me
yes.
for the. It's for the better.
For the
yes.
better. No, that's how it should always be. Right?
It should have been.
Yeah.
It should have been.
And do you have any personal artifacts, documents like old photographs, maybe old passport copies or anything that you want to share? We can scan it and return it back to you.
My first passport is British passport because I'm from Kenya.
Okay, yes.
So I do have that passport.
Okay.
During those days, if you were a British subject, the way I was a British subject, because I was born in East Africa, and the British. It was a British rule at that time, so I had a British passport. And when I came here with that passport, I got my citizenship within 1 year.
Okay.
Everybody else had to wait for 3 years, but
Yeah.
I got it within one year.
Okay.
So those were the rules then. And
So that kind of helped
I
you.
became Canadian in 1 year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's very nice. Okay, I'll scan it.
Sure,
add it to
I
my
can get
records.
it. Yeah.
Perfect,
Have a
perfect.
good-
Well, thank you so much for
Yeah.
being a part of this project and sharing your personal story. Really appreciate it.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Good to be here.